Welcome back to the Real Arsenal Deal podcast. This is Rav, your host, recording this on a sunny but chilly Thursday here in Melbourne, Australia. Wherever you are in the world, welcome or welcome back if you're a repeat listener. And I hope everyone is doing great. There is lots to talk about today, because we now have officially confirmed by the club. We now have our first signing of the summer. Kepa Arrizabalaga confirmed yesterday, or actually it was the day before, overnight our time here in Australia. So it's fantastic. It's hopefully the first of many signings, up to 6, I believe, if depending which rumours you are following or tracking. There could be up to 6 signings this summer. So I'm going to get into a lot of different things today. But look, we have to start with the Kepa announcement, because it's actually official. I think this is an excellent transaction by the club, a very smart, savvy, quick piece of business that you associate with a club just doing diligent work, being professional, being swift, and closing deals. This is precisely the type of transaction that I hope embodies this iteration of Arsenal, now under the sporting directorship of Andrea Berta. This is a type of signing that really makes me excited, and it's going to tie into a broader point that I'm going to be making. I'll do that a little bit later when I've jotted down some players, some numbers. I understand there's some frustration brewing from certain segments of the fan base about the seemingly the perceived amount of time it's taken to close deals and announce deals. But there's a broader point that I'll come back to. Also, we have to talk about the latest in terms of the winger rumours. If Ornstein the other day, David Ornstein, he mentioned that the Eberechi Eze rumours are in addition to a winger and a forward. And my goodness me, like when I read that, I almost spat out my coffee with excitement. I tend to catch up on the reports the morning after, because they're usually broken UK time. So when I'm sitting down my morning coffee, it's part of my morning routine. I'll make myself and my wife a coffee. We're chatting to our boys. They're having breakfast, so I'll have a quick peek at Blue Sky and whatnot, and just see what's happening. When I read that, oh boy, was I excited. So let's get back to Kepa. Because yes, I did say I was going to start there, and if you are a repeat listener of my podcast, I thank you again for your patience. Sometimes I do have a bit of a way of going off on different tangents. When I said I'm going to say one thing, I end up talking about something completely different. So thank you for bearing with me. Kepa is an excellent deal. Premier League proven. I mean, I'm telling everyone, I'm not telling you guys anything that you don't already know, but just going off the headline numbers, £5 million as a release clause. Premier League proven. He's at an excellent age for a goalkeeper who tend to not really come into their peak years until they're in their 30s, and I believe he's exactly 30 years old at the time of recording this podcast. So he has a wealth of experience. This is the key thing. Arsenal have a bit of a gap in between our goalkeepers, our goalkeeper structure at the moment. I know we signed Setford last summer, which is predominantly that's more of a youth / academy signing. I think he has tremendous potential, and the club certainly sees something in him for the long term. However, he's 18 years old, I believe, and behind him there was a Jack Porter, of course, who made his debut in the League Cup last season. He's 16 years old. I mean, he probably attended school the next morning, right? So we had Carl Hein away on loan, who I believe I think he should be seeking a permanent move elsewhere this summer. So aside from Raya as the senior member, the number one, we've had a number of number 2 goalkeepers come in and out in that time, and it's just good to have just someone there settled, an experienced professional we can rely upon. I'd have no issue with him stepping in for all the cup fixtures And hopefully Arsenal get ourselves into a position like we did last season where our Champions League qualification is nicely, well, I don't want to use the word sealed because on paper, mathematically, anything is still possible in your last few games. But we got to a stage last season where it was looking fairly likely, fairly comfortable that we were going to finish in those top 8 spots and avoid the extra 2 fixtures that come in an already stacked January New Year period. So hopefully we get to a position where then we can start to then sit down the likes of Raya, sit down the likes of Saliba and whatnot, and all that fatigue-induced injuries and mistakes that we saw come into Arsenal as the season went on, just due to the circumstances at the time. So hopefully someone like Kepa, he'll just be able to slot in and out, and hopefully it can just be business as usual in terms of Arsenal's backline, our structure, our way of playing. He signed for 3 years as well, which is an important note to make. I'm sorry I didn't mention that already. A 3-year contract, that's an excellent term because we've now just got some stability there. There's been so much coming and going and incomings, outgoings in that department. I just want to see some stability there now. You may or may not have seen that stat the other day that with Kepa's signing. Now we've actually under Arteta we've actually signed more goalkeepers than wingers/forwards. Yes, there's always specific circumstances involved in everything, right? There's always context. Just on face value, though, right? That doesn't reflect well. It just doesn't reflect well on the club, on the strategy. We're doing lots of U-turns and pivoting elsewhere, and then this just even throughout that, I take someone like Matt Turner, who if you follow my podcast, well, I don't go in on individuals. I don't go in on players. I love the club. We're all tracking for the same thing. So there's nothing personal to any of my commentary here. However, you just look stylistically. When we signed Matt Turner, he's not accustomed to playing the ball out with his feet. It's just you just have to take a step back and just zoom out and think like what's the rationale with some of these signings? Like what are we actually doing with that? And as time went on, we saw he was not an option that we could rely upon and trust to fit Arsenal. He's a fantastic goalkeeper, and I wish him all the best. And I'm sure he's going to have a long career elsewhere, just like he already has. Right, just putting your Arsenal cap on for a moment. Like some of the decisions we've made, you just have to question, like what is the rationale? What's the thinking? So thankfully now, with Kepa in, official, signed, sealed, delivered, all the social media videos and interviews are published, are up there. Magnificent. Outstanding work, Arsenal. Well done. We can tick that off, and now we can move forward with some nice stability there. So that brings me to my next point. The striker saga continuing. So what's really interesting is just watching from afar the whole PR game being played by both parties here. I'm referring to Šeško and Gyökeres, the two names that have just continued to be bandied about. And you just got to be really, really careful what you read, what you believe, where it's coming from, what are the source, what are the origins of the information. Look, I'm actually glad I don't do Twitter. I'm just really glad because it can't be good in times like this. There's sometimes such a claw for being what's the word just trying to be relevant, trying to put something out there and get views, get clicks, the whole clickbait element to it, and it can't be conducive to just sound reasoning and decision making sometimes. And look, maybe I'm showing my age. I guess I'm 44. It's not really my thing. I do Blue Sky and I heavily curate my feed, who pops up. And I just think it's just a really valuable lesson. And you can maybe apply this to any sort of social media or just any aspect of life, really. Just be really, really careful. Be really mindful what you choose to consume. Curate your feeds on Instagram, on Facebook and whatnot, just so you're not bombarded with just all the other stuff that can really have an effect on your mental well-being, your mental health. Anyway, that was another sideways tangent. My apologies again. So the point I was trying to make is that there's an interesting PR game being played by both sides. It can't be coincidental that on one hand, you see Sesko's camp, his agent coming out with very concise and very clearly put together words about how you leave a club is important, right? In terms of reputation, your character, loyalty, your integrity, all those sorts of traits that we've seen. Reports come out from that he wants to do the right thing by Leipzig and leave on a good note in a respectful way. And conversely, around the same time, you're seeing reports come out. I believe the agent was quoted via Fabrizio Romano, which again, you have to question, what's the deal behind the scenes? Have they approached Fabrizio with some sort of financial incentive to get this story out there, given his reach, his reputation? Anyway, so and you hear reports that Gyökeres is so upset with the club and the president that potentially he's not going to report back for preseason training. This can't be coincidental, right? This sort of PR game being played out loud, and from what I understand, there aren't any other major suitors right now who are really going hard for them too. It just seems to be Arsenal. So perhaps that puts Arsenal in a bit more of a bargaining position, because we know we're not being outbid, or there's a sense of urgency that if we don't act immediately, someone else is going to come in and sort of swoop them from us. The swoop is one of the most overused words in the transfer window, but it doesn't seem that that's a major risk right now. And maybe that works in Arsenal's favour, because we do have a bit of a more of a powerful position there. Conversely, everyone knows across the market that Arsenal, that this is our major, our most significant purchase in quite some time, and us needing a forward, needing a winger, right? When Arsenal's on the end of the phone, that they can drive up a hard bargain too, because they know how much we need this, that we do need to act, and that we want to get our business done swiftly. So those players will be on that plane to pre-season and integrating and hit the ground running, especially with such a tough opening to the Premier League season. So it depends what angle you look at, whether which side of the coin you're looking at. But it just struck me the other day, you're reading the two quotes playing off against each other, that I just wonder what sort of gamesmanship is being played. I still think Sesko is the one. Again, depending on what you believe, Arsenal don't want to pay what Arsenal believe is overvalued, and I can understand that, right? Everyone has a value. When you're selling your house, or you're selling your car, or you're selling you're selling some old bits and pieces around the house that you're moving on, you have a value you place on them. And conversely, someone who's shopping for it, a buyer, right? They have their maximum that they believe it's worth. So it's just a classic case of where the two parties are at, and if they can meet at all somewhere in the middle, and that remains to be seen. Now this actually ties into another point, and I may as well just do it now. Actually, looking at my running notes, I've jotted down, and again, full disclaimer on this, please. I apologize if I've got any of these figures incorrect. What I'm just about to do now, I've got a bit of a table going on the main names that we are being linked to, and the reported figures that Arsenal are bidding for or offering, versus what the selling club wants. So if you just bear with me for a moment, because what I want to get to at the end, I want to total up the two figures and show how significant that differential is. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier in the recording, that I understand there's a level of frustration that people are saying, just pay the extra, just pay it. I mean, there was a report in the recent days that Arsenal and Leipzig are around £10 million apart in terms of Sesko, and there's an immediate response to just pay it, and I understand the tendency to do that. However, there are significant ramifications, downstream effects to that. It is such a heavy financial commitment that Arsenal would be undertaking, especially wanting up to 5, hopefully 6 signings, and those are in terms of position in the squad. Goalkeeper, that's one, that's already done. A midfielder, Zubimendi, I believe he's announcement is imminent, that he'll probably officially be announced next. Who knows, even by the time you listen to this or the time that I publish and distribute this recording, maybe he is officially announced. So that's 2. We, of course, want the striker that I'm just referring to. That's 3. We need that additional midfielder, quite likely to be Norgaard. I believe that's close to being finalised. If you caught the quotes from Brentford's sporting director in recent days, that's very, very close. So that's 4. And then there's Christian Mosquera, that versatile defender that we are seeking to strengthen the squad, especially our defensive squad. Noting that Tierney has already left and Zinchenko possibly, Kiwior possibly. So that's 5 signings, and then of course that winger, that elusive winger that we've been wanting for some seasons now. Many transfer windows have come and gone. We haven't strengthened. Ideally on the left-hand side, that takes us to 6 signings, and the names that have been bandied about are anyone from Rodrigo to Eze, who I would love either of them, by the way. Even most recently, Madueke from Chelsea has been linked, and I'm not as enthused on that one. But the point being is that potentially up to 6 signings. So what we pay one by one for these acquisitions, it matters. It matters because fast forward to early September when the window closes and the season is well and truly started and we're underway again, with the ambitions that we have. We want to lift the Premier League. We want to lift the Champions League. If we end up with 4 of the 6, right, just because we've gone and overpaid, like how does that do us? All this stuff matters. That's not going to appease us as fans or in terms of our ambitions, especially when we start playing 2-3 times a week and we've got that heavy schedule again, and we've got May coming, April, May, we're trying to balance Champions League semi-finals and quarterfinals and key Premier League fixtures in between on the weekends. We need a strong, bolstered, strengthened squad to call upon, because it's going to be on like Donkey Kong then. So here's what I've jotted down. So I've got Mosquera. It seems that Arsenal want to sign him for about £15 million. I believe Valencia want 20. Okay, then Christian Norgaard. My understanding is that Arsenal's package will be around £12 million, which I've got to say that's surprisingly cheap from buying within the Premier League. But that's a story for another day. My understanding is that Brentford wanted closer to 15 to 18 for him. So I'll just use the 15 million figure, right? So Šeško, I believe Arsenal will value him at around £65 million. And Leipzig wants £75 million, which takes you into the sort of 85 to 90 million sort of euro, that sort of total package. Okay, then I've got Kepa, who I mentioned. I know I've already discussed Kepa, but he's relevant here because we paid the £5 million release clause, where up until now it seemed our pursuit of Joan Garcia was closer to £25 million. So that figure is relevant for this point now. So I'm just going to jot them down again. So it seems that we want to pay Mosquera 15, Norgaard 12, Šeško 65, Kepa 5. So I've got £85 million. Okay. Now conversely, in terms of what the selling clubs wanted, so Mosquera 20, Norgaard I'll use 15. Šeško, I'll use 75, and I'll also add 25 in terms of the goalkeeper in reference to what Joan Garcia would have cost. So then I've got a total of £135 million. Now, £85 million versus £135 million, that's a £50 million differential. That ties into what I was saying earlier, that when you add all of these transactions up, that £50 million, that almost accounts for that 6th signing, almost, right? Not quite, because I know Eze's release clause is being reported at around the 60 million, or part of me is at £65 million mark. Again, I'm not across every single rumour, so my sincere apologies if I've got that wrong. But the point I'm trying to make is that is a significant percentage of almost covering, or as close to as possible, that additional luxury world class sort of signing that we're looking for. Whether it's Rodrigo or Eze, look, it remains to be seen. But please work with me on at a high level here. £50 million, and as much of that we can save and allocate elsewhere within the squad, that can make all the difference come the end of the window. And this is the kind of rationale that I'm hoping people understand, that there's a much bigger picture involved than just paying that extra amount for someone like Šeško. And even in reference to the Mosquera the Mosquera pursuit, from my understanding, that would all but put an end to the likes of Jurel Hato. Now, he, in terms of what I understand, very highly rated. Quite possibly there's going to be the better player longer term. He doesn't have the same situation as Mosquera does, of course, who's inside his last 12 months of his contract. Ajax are a very strong selling club. They always return significant fees for their stars as they go elsewhere along Europe. So Mosquera at about 15 versus Hato, who's quite likely going to be in the 40s, in the £40 million vicinity, if again, depending on what you believe. So once again, this is the difference. Now, I understand though that in saying all this, there is another question mark to be had, that are Arsenal compromising on quality? Like, do we actually want these players, or are we just trying to fill a hole in the squad? Now, I can understand there's a cynical side to that. So look, only time will tell, of course. Just like only time will tell, on paper, we've exited Jorginho and Thomas Partey from the squad and Zubimendi and Norgaard to come in. On paper, is that strengthening? Is that an improvement, or is it the same, or is it inferior? Again, we just don't know. Only time will tell. I can only speculate, and but again, we haven't actually seen them play in an Arsenal shirt yet for a period of time. So we'll have to just reserve judgment on that one. What I will say though is that it is clear what Arsenal are trying to do. I mean, you don't need me to explain this to you, right? The ambition of Arsenal is palpable. No one wants to win more than Arteta. Absolutely no one does. He's almost obsessive compulsive about this now. You can just see it sometimes. He was at boiling point maybe a few times towards the end of the season as all of the circumstances and all the noise around Arsenal and all the injuries and whatnot, and it was all just seeming to catch up with him too. So I hope he's enjoying some downtime as well, away from the game, with him in his family, and of course he would be heavily involved behind the scenes with our recruitment. But no one wants to win more, and if these are the players that have been identified that strengthen Arsenal, that we can trust, we can utilize accordingly, and they can be a part of what we hope is a great moment in Arsenal's history, then for now, like, that's good enough for me. Like, that is absolutely good enough for me. I have trust, I have faith in the recruitment. Yes, I understand the cynicism, and yes, I can understand there's a bit of a sour taste from what happened in the last summer market, because everything I'm saying now, you could point back to then and say, well, if this is the way the club felt, how come we didn't go and sign who we needed last summer and whatnot? But again, there's always context, there's always circumstances, right? It's the whole Edu situation with him then departing a few months after, you just have to question, how, what was really happening behind the scenes. Were we all united? Were we all aligned? And were all the right things happening in the background to conduct business? Anyway, so I think I'll leave that point there. Hopefully I've wrapped that up pretty well. That what we do matters. How much we commit to it matters. It's a significant financial outlay. And as we've seen with Arsenal, when we pay big money for someone, we don't always just have the ability to, if it doesn't work out, that we don't really sell them a year later. Do you know what I mean? Like, some clubs are really good at doing that. I mean, take Chelsea, for example. It seems that they can just spend whatever hell they want to spend, and they just reallocate stuff in between their finances and sell each other a hotel and whatnot. It's farcical, really. And then when they sell those players, they're still getting excellent returns. Look, I guess it helps that those players are contracted for 44 years, but they seem to get themselves into trouble, but they just as easily get themselves out. Not quite the same with Arsenal. We don't have quite the same strong reputation as a selling club, and what, so many other clubs just wait for us to cancel contracts and pay out players, and they can just pick them up for basically relative peanuts in the grand scheme of things. So look, when Arsenal commit this sort of sum of money to players, it's a commitment for several years. So we want to get this right, because there are ramifications too of getting signings wrong. And boy, we've suffered with that as well, haven't we, over the years with Arsenal getting choices wrong. So I'm hoping each and every transaction that we finalise, one by one, the club is continuing to work towards this bigger picture, because we all want that winger, don't we? Like the rumours are tantalising. So Rodrigo, that I know there's a fair bit of noise in the Club World Cup stuff, which I haven't watched a second of, by the way. But from what I understand, he's not being selected at the moment. Some people can read that as maybe, is there an exit on the cards? But whatever's going to happen with him, it ain't happening soon. It's going to be happening quite late in the window. Versus there seems to be a genuine live opportunity for Eze at some very doable numbers. By the way, that release clause that I cited earlier around the £65 million mark. Again, apologise if I'm wrong. That's very, very doable for Arsenal, especially if we continue to do swift, savvy business elsewhere. There'll still be a couple of outgoings too. They're not going to be like major game-changing sort of transactions or fees, but we should be able to get decent returns on if the likes of Zinchenko move on, or Jakub Kiwior, who I would love to keep, but again, his market value could have peaked right now, so perhaps it is an opportune time for him and the club to take advantage of that. So it remains to be seen. So that there will be some sizable fees, hopefully, that can offset some of our a portion of our spending. But getting these decisions right is so important. I would love Eze, just as I mentioned him a moment ago. I may as well give my thoughts. I would love it. I think outstanding prospect. In terms of the prospect of how Arsenal can play. Yes, he's not an out-and-out winger. He's a bit more of an inside left in those channels he can operate in. It's stylistically quite different to Rodrigo, and I just wonder, would this signal a bit of an adjustment in terms of how Arsenal then set up, especially on that left-hand side, right? He has excellent knowledge. With Declan Rice being both England internationals, so there's some synergies there on that left-hand side, and look, it's quite tantalising to think what he could do in an Arsenal shirt. He would also give us a genuine option at the right eight. We've seen Odegaard struggle with fitness issues and the burden of basically playing every minute that he was available in that position. We didn't have that natural alternative, and as the season went on, Arteta seemed more and more reluctant to try Ethan in there. So, all of a sudden, right, Eberechi Eze in your squad, he improves you across the board, absolutely across that entire front attacking midfield / forward group. Outstanding football, absolutely outstanding. In his prime as well. He's an Arsenal fan, Premier League proven, England international, as I mentioned. It ticks almost every box. If we can get this done, I think that would just be outstanding from the club. So let's watch this space on that one. Okay, so I'm just keeping an eye on the time here. I've been recording a little while. Thank you for bearing with me this far. Before I wrap this one up, I just wanted to cover a listener question I've received. And please, I very much welcome this sort of stuff. I read every single word of feedback. I'm getting every comment. I love this stuff. So please, if you would like me to address anything specific or any question or any bit of feedback, I read every single word, and I'm happy to answer any questions on my next recording that you've submitted. So for this one of my long-term favorites in terms of supporting this recording from the very start, Matt's all, folks. Thank you so much as well for your support all along the way. Very kind feedback, and it's always lovely to hear from you. So he submitted a question. I will read it out word for word and give my answer. So Matt says, "Hello, mate. I have a question for you for your next pod. If you could ask Arteta any question off the record and he had to answer honestly, what would you ask him?" Like, what a brilliant question. I've been swaying back and forth on this one, and look, I could actually give 5 answers to this, probably even more. But the one that I've been able to whittle it down to is Aubameyang. Like, what really happened? Like, what truly happened with that saga that culminated in him basically being exited on deadline day, right? A couple of seasons back in that January window, where if anyone's watched, I imagine many of you have, the Amazon documentary, we saw that covered at length in an episode or two, and like, as these things work, of course it's going to be heavily influenced by Arsenal and to suit Arsenal's, I guess, PR management of what they wanted to look like. And you saw Arteta and Arsenal making numerous references to like a dossier about his alleged breaches of conduct and behaviour and running late for training and for matches and whatnot. And of course, there's 2 sides to every story, isn't there? There's always 2 sides, right? And I'm not particularly taking a side here at all. Like, I loved Aubameyang, right? And I also recognise I think the time was right for him to exit. It just kind of got to such a toxic stage that Arsenal needed to part ways with him, and he needed to as well. And I wish him all the very best. He was a wonderful player for me, and I have tremendous memories of him. He basically won us that FA Cup, right? But his performances in the semi-final and then the final, he scored all 4 of our goals. Right, for me, his legacy is always stamped. It's the last major trophy the club has won, by the way, and he was integral to that. So, to get back to the question, what I'd love to know is, what I'd love to ask Arteta is, like, what really happened? What are the details of this dossier? Like, what did you really do? I know there's what can be reported and said else, publicly in a documentary or in press conferences, and I believe there was that highly publicised North London derby where he arrived late, right? He actually arrived right to the match, and Arteta had to sit him down basically in the dressing room, I recall, and say that he's not playing, he's not in the starting lineup, and Arsenal still won that game, which is brilliant, of course, right? It just like, wow, like, what really happened behind the scenes? I would just love to know, if he was to answer honestly and off the record, I would love to even read that dossier if I could have 5 minutes. If I could have 5 minutes in a closed room, right? And then I hand it back to someone like a secret agent or something, like no one's ever to see this again. It goes behind lock and key. I would love 5 minutes even just to read that book, to read that dossier. What really happened? I'm just forever fascinated by it, because it got to a very sad situation for all parties. And even though it needed to happen, that the exit needed to happen and whatnot, I just can't help but look back on that little period of time and just with a tinge of sadness as well, a tinge of regret. Just, like what could have been. And look, that's just a long-winded way of answering that question. Matt, thank you so much for that. So in summary, in conclusion, I would love just to know what truly happened with Aubameyang and Arteta. And it's just kind of forever. It's going to forever, be in the back of my mind. And maybe one day we'll find out. I know Aubameyang gave that interview some months back to Ornstein, which is a brilliant read, brilliant listen. It was great. He covered a number of things, and I know there was that very unfortunate incident with it was right in the peak of COVID, all the lockdown protocols, all the travel protocols, and him arriving later, like one day later back into London than what was agreed by the club because his mother was quite unwell. That had severe implications that wouldn't be the case now. Like, he could just hop on a morning flight now, right, and be back at London Colney, report for training by lunchtime that day. Back then it wasn't the same. There were all sorts of travel protocols that really impacted, I guess, what he then could participate in with back when he got back to London. So I know that was a key point as well, and maybe that was the straw that broke the camel's back, as that old saying goes, right? So maybe it was to do with that one. Look, I think I'll leave it there. Hopefully that answers your question, Matt. And mate, please feel free to submit more. I will cover every single thing that I can. Thank you to you all for listening so far. If you've made it this far, greatly appreciated. I would very much welcome if you could like and subscribe if you're listening on YouTube, or a review, hopefully a 5-star rating on your podcast platform, Apple or Spotify. It really, really helps. It really helps engagement and visibility. So thank you so much. Look after yourselves. I'm going to sign off for now. Look after your loved ones. Look after yourself. Be mindful of what you consume. Check in on a friend or a family member. Just see how they're doing. If it's all getting a bit too much for you, I hope you're okay. Head out if you can. Get some daylight. Get some sunshine, some fresh air. Get some steps in. Just look after yourselves, please, because it's just a very difficult world that we live in at the moment. And please take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones. And I'll talk to you soon. And come on, Arsenal.